Drink it in, man.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions! Cornbread! Cornbread! Cornbread!
Drink it in, man.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions! Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Detroit Koolaid. Detroit Koolaid drinkers. What's going on, everybody? It's your host, Eric Oakrey. Hold on a second. Drink it in, man. Side of cornbread.
Cornbread!
Make it a double.
Cornbread!
I'm here on the Detroit Koolaid Cast. You guys know what it is, talking Detroit Lions. And we got OTAs. We even had a mandatory mini camp here as we get recording. We have everybody in the house. Everybody's feeling good. Dan Campbell's back rolling. And there's another guy who's back. And he's back on the podcast today. And that's the one and only Logan Lamorandier at L Lamorandier on Twitter. Sports Illustrated All Lions. He comes on when he can. He's a busy man. He's got takes. He's a draft expert. And we always have a ton of fun talking ball when he's able to make this happen. So, Logan, I can't thank you enough for your time. How you doing, man?
Doing good. Draft is done since the last time we talked, and OTAs are happening, and it's kind of a slower part of the season, but it's nice and relaxing, and don't want to wish away the summer, but yeah, can't wait till football in the fall, and outside of that, yeah, everything is great. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, man. Like I say, I just you did get gracious enough to carve out some time before the draft, so we got your opinion, and now got you back on. So we cannot mess around, Logan. I don't know if you've heard me say that on the show before, but we're just gonna get right into this, man. No time for pleasantries, talking about the weather, asking how work's going. We got football to talk about, man. And the first thing is I want to do the Logan Lamorandier draft review. I mean, I want to just give you the floor, go pick by pick, kind of see what you're thinking, as well as what you liked, what you didn't like, how to maybe project these players for the listeners out there, what you think they're going to be as the really gets playing ball, training camp, all those things. And before we do that, I'm still working on like gimmicks, sound bites, and nicknames. But how you feeling about Agent Zero Terrion Arnold from Alabama? Do you like the nickname? Do you like the zero? And then we'll talk about the player.
I like the nickname because I like the number 0. I think it's cool that he's wearing it. Players have just been able to start wearing the number 0, and I think I've always liked the single digit numbers, and 0 is just something, it's unique, but it's kind of cool at the same time. So I'm all for it. I'm glad he got, I think the aesthetic part of the jerseys, with the top cornerbacks always have good numbers. So I'm glad he got something up to my standards, at least. I know it means absolutely nothing, but I'm good with it, man.
That's right, man. I do like these new crispy jerseys, the colors, the big block numbers. I will disagree with you that I hate 0. I like single digits, but not 0, especially on my top corner, who it doesn't look swaggy enough. I do like Agent Zero as kind of a nickname, but I want your thoughts on Terrion Arnold, because when they made this pick, me and Choppy couldn't have been happier. It's the live pick that we made. He's just a tremendous kid, a top-end personality, a good football player. I mean, everything about him. So I want to know how you felt when they turned this card in, when he went out to the 200, 300, 500,000 people that were downtown Detroit. I mean, you had to like it overall, right?
Oh, yeah. When he started sliding, you wondered if the Lions would go up and get him. They brought him in for the private visit, so you could tell that they were interested, and they should be interested. I did have Quinion Mitchell ahead of him, I think, probably just due to the speed factor, because that's really the only complaint I probably have with Arnold, is you just wonder about that top end speed. But everything else in terms of hips and being able to find the ball, getting his hands on passes, and then those are the important parts of cornerback. But also the Lions really care about run defense, which is also important, but he's a great run defender as a former safety, not afraid to hit people. And if you've seen interviews, he has confidence and swagger, and you definitely need that as a cornerback in today's NFL. So yeah, they moved up 5 spots, and for him to still be there was a bit surprising. So I do waver back and forth by going up the 5 spots and trading away a mid-round pick. It's like Kool-Aid McKinstry. I would have been fine with him if they waited and got him. I think Kool-Aid was kind of the forgotten man a little bit just because he didn't have a great season last year, but he still is an All-American type of player and was a bit bigger, maybe probably a little faster, but Terrion just gets his hands on a lot of passes. But you also look at that he had like almost double the amount of targets as Kool-Aid did. And I feel like that's a large reason of why his interception numbers and pass defense numbers were so high. And they were the highest in the SEC. So it's great that he's getting his hands on balls, but I think he also had a lot of opportunities. So for me, that was my only hesitation. And I still lean towards they definitely made the right move. And Brad Holmes, trusting what he does at this point. And yeah, maybe he's had 1 or 2 misses here or there, but I don't really care. Overall, he knows what he's doing. So it's really, they needed a cornerback. They went and got a lot of draft evaluators' best cornerback in the class, and I can't really be upset about it at all. I'm actually very happy about it. So to me, I think it was kind of a no-brainer that once he started falling, you could trade up for him and get him. So that's about it on him. I mean, he's a complete player. That's what the great thing about him is.
Logan, before we move to the second round pick, I want to circle back to a constant talk that we have on this pod, and that's this. All those things you mentioned, whether it be statistical, analytical, all the different metrics and things that you've been looking at are all valid and all tremendous. But when I fell in love with Terrion Arnold? When they picked him, because afterwards I got to see his post-draft interview, I got to see the $1 Million Smile, I got to see this YouTube video he just put out where he's the Pied Piper, the coolest guy ever. I got to see where he went to the beach and this guy is dieseled up, looks like a 10-year pro. So many things that we don't get as either fans or people that try to do some draft homework. And it just comes down to what me and you talk about, Logan. Like, this guy not only loves ball, like, he has an infectious personality, not only in person but for the game, that I think is just worth so much more than the pick or exactly what he does in his first couple games. It's a perfect fit culture-wise. He's going to be a fan favorite. He's going to make plays, like you said, on the ball. He's going to be a great teammate. All those things are just making me so much more excited about this person and about him as a player. So that's where I'm at with it, man. It just keeps growing every day. And same thing with like Jack Campbell and some of these other guys that we're getting. It's like I love what they do on the field, and I love some of their measurables and what they can be, but the most thing I love is that they're just dogs. They love the game, and they're just going to be great team players for a long time here. I see these guys being captain types. I see them being producers, as well as just like I say, it's something special when you can have that type of energy that Terrion Arnold has, and everybody just rally around you, and you have that type of confidence. Like, love everything about it. So.
Well, there you go, bringing up the intangible aspect that I always typically just gloss over.
I got to get it in.
Prospect, but you're very right. Like, yeah, the interviews have been amazing of him, and you can tell the type of person he is, that he is going to be a great culture fit, and he's very easy to like. So yeah, I'm glad he's a Detroit Lion for sure.
So second round, there were some other players on the board. We even live on the clock were saying, would they double dip on corner? I kind of thought not so much, but when they did do it, it's kind of like, well, good, because we haven't been able to cover Coffee. We can't play anybody on pass defense, so to get Agent Zero, and then to come back with, I need some guidance here, Logan. Do you like Rake, Rake, or do you like the Straw? What do you think?
I think I like the Rake probably a little better.
I was hoping you'd say the Straw, because then I could do this.
Drink it in, man.
Fits.
Yeah, okay.
Just imagine if we got Agent Zero out there, the Straw, and then what if we got this guy on the other side?
It's not unusual to be
There it is, Logan, the Carlton, along with the Rake or the Straw and Agent Zero. But let's talk about Rakeshaw, man. They double dipped on the corner. We had heard they like this guy. We know he's scrappy. We know he's physical. But, man, it just seemed to be nice value and a player that even if he doesn't have to play right away, but I think is very nice value pick, good position in need, nice future dog maybe for this team. So I like a lot of things about him.
Yeah, I have no issues with them going back-to-back corner just because it was a very weak position and they needed to inject some youth into it, and that's exactly what they did. And Rakestraw, for a while there, he was getting mocked at the end of the first round, commonly to the Lions, because the Lions, there was a connection there even in the pre-draft process, and they brought him in for a private visit as well, the top 30. So you knew they would like him. You obviously knew if you watch any film on him, just his play style and how aggressive he is, especially towards the run, that was going to check the box that the Lions coaches looked for. But it's kind of funny because in a lot of ways, I feel like he's very similar to Terrion Arnold. Both these guys, Rakestraw and Arnold, were the top graded run defense corners per Pro Football Focus and last year. So it's like, okay, yeah, the Lions have a type. But again, I go back to I feel like priority number one with a cornerback, you need to have guys that can cover, and both these guys can. And Rakestraw is, I would say, more quick than fast. The 4.51 40, which, for a corner is pretty average. But I think the concerning part I had was just with the flying 20, which is the last 20 yards of a 40-yard dash. That's typically your top end speed. And you can calculate that out by using, the 20-yard split versus their total time. And Rakestraw he wasn't dead last, but he was close to the last of all the corners that ran, which you would assume means the top end speed is not great. And I know the Lions have all the GPS data on what these guys' top end speed is, but Arnold wasn't a whole lot better in that flying 20 either. So that's the part I have that's concerning. But if they have help over the top, and I think these guys are like glue underneath, it's just more so when you go up against the elite speed receivers, are they going to struggle with that? But again, outside of that, there's just so much to like about both players. Rakestraw, his ball production, at least in terms of interceptions, weren't what Arnold had, and it's probably a reason why he lasted until he did. But he still gets his hands on a lot of passes, and he's just a tough player to deal with. But Rakestraw, I was happy with where they took him. If they took him in the first round, yeah, I probably would have been upset. But I do, like you mentioned earlier, think that the value of where they got him was pretty solid. On my big board rank, I had him at 53. He went 61st overall. So that's actually better value than in terms of my rankings. But yeah, I don't think you can go wrong. The Lions need cornerback help, and they struggled mightily with depth last year. And now, at least looking at the preseason roster, if Emmanuel Mosley comes back, they're going to have quite the logjam at corner with just a lot of potential that could definitely turn into something. Because I think corner, if they could fix that corner spot, you can go a long ways. That was definitely their biggest area that they needed to improve from last year. And really one of the few areas for a team that's trying to make it to the Super Bowl, you definitely have to improve those spots where you're weakest. And that's what the Lions did back to back in rounds 1 and 2.
Exactly. All good stuff from you again. I would just say, lots of great points by you, even the counterpoints of can they run, but we've also seen guys that have those top end analytics that can't play or don't want to tackle or don't love the game and all those stuff. So Rake, aka Straw, he came up from a tough upbringing and just a real, like I said, he really loves it, I think. So I'm not as worried about some of those late metrics, but like you say, sometimes the NFL is a little bit of a game of, you got to be fast enough, you got to be tall enough, you got to be big enough, but also you got to have those intangibles, which we already talked about, so we won't get into that argument again. But this is the one I really want to know from you, man. The Lions trade up, didn't have a third or whatever. They had moved it around for different players and done some things. Cooper Beebe, went with that third they traded to get up and get Terrion Arnold. But in the fourth, man, they come way up to get Giovanni Gio Manu, as he likes to be called, and I almost broke my whole computer. This guy wasn't ranked. I've said what I've said about it on the show. Obviously, now I can see that what they see. I hope it really works. What were your initial thoughts, and then where do you stand now on this big 6'7", 350-pound monster of a beast that could possibly be our future left tackle with Penne over there on the right?
Yeah, I thought he went a lot sooner than he would. I know the NFL was doing their due diligence on him because he was basically in the pre-draft process visiting with every single NFL team. And the Lions, you'll see a trend here. The Lions also brought him in for a top 30 visit. So that's really when he went on my radar. But I just couldn't really watch much film on the guy. There wasn't much film out there, at least accessible to me. And everything I read about him is, just looking at his testing numbers, yeah, it's easy to see. He's just one big giant ball of clay. I mean, giant at 350 pounds, 6'7", 5-second 40-yard dash at that weight. Like, the guy is just a crazy athlete that you don't come across all that often. And in the fourth round, you're trading next year's, what they gave him next year's third round pick to move up to get him. I felt like that was a lot to give up for such a project player. And the Lions need a swing tackle, I thought, more so immediately. And I don't think Manu is going to be really ready anytime soon. And maybe he could surprise us and he'll come in right out of the University of British Columbia and come into the NFL and just tear it up. But I don't think that's going to be the case. He's going to be a long-term project. He's going to take up a spot on the roster for that time. So that was my biggest issue, is just how much they gave to get him, to move up to get him, and how many years it's going to be before he's ready, if at all. I mean, it's a giant risk. And the kind of comparison that always comes up is the Eagles tackle, Jordan Mailata, he's a great player, and he came from rugby, but they took him in the 7th round. But he was also kind of like the Manu type of player who you didn't know what he was, just a big giant athlete, and that seems to work well in the NFL. So it's just tough to say. You have to wait this one out. I just thought it was a pretty big risk to send future draft capital for a guy who I didn't think would be drafted in the middle rounds. And yes, he's a big athlete, but I also had, looking closer at all of his testing numbers, like, he wasn't a super agile guy for his size, which you would expect for a massive human being like that. But for as good of an athlete as he was, I hoped, and maybe he just wasn't trained up and didn't spend a bunch of time like other NFL prospects, training for the 3-cone drill and the short shuttle. But those times were well below average. But he can definitely move people, and he has something that you can't teach, and is size. So it's one big giant risk, and I don't know how it's going to play out. Brad Holmes is going to look like a genius if it works out well, and if it doesn't work out, it's probably going to be one of those things where most draft analysts were like, yeah, like that was a head scratching move, why you traded up in the 4th round to get him. So we'll trust Brad Holmes, and it's definitely exciting to see his progression, because he's a massive human being, and it's going to be fun to see him out there move some people around if he can kind of progress as he needs to.
One quick counter too is I feel like if a lot of the NFL draft is kind of a game of chicken. You know other GMs know about this player. You know that there's some internal buzz. It's kind of like who's going to be able to get him when, and I feel like sometimes you do. Those are the ones that seem like a reach, as we call it, or an overpick, but really those guys know inside the league as well as. Would you rather take him, half round early and get him, or would you rather try to play the waiting game and miss out, and then he ends up being what you thought he was going to be? I think that's part of it as well. So I think that Brad Holmes had decided this guy is going to be what he's going to be. I'm going to get him, and he did, and now it's train him up, work with him, do all that type of stuff. So seems similar like with Vaki. They love this guy from a football perspective. You heard a lot of buzz. He can Swiss Army knife. He does all these things. They also moved up for him, 2 quick picks there in the 4th where we really didn't have a 4th to start or whatever, and now we got multiple. Really shocked me in the draft process. What'd you think? And in general terms, what do you think about Vaki as a running back for the Detroit Lions?
Well, I think that, I wasn't shocked that they took him because it seemed like they really liked him. High football character, captain type of guy, definitely a culture fit. So when you're looking over all the prospects that seem to match what Holmes is looking for in terms of football character and IQ, he was way up there. And then he was announced as a running back. I'm like, that's kind of weird, but I don't really believe it. Like a running back, like he predominantly played safety and was a pretty good safety. More of a strong in the box type of safety, but he still had some coverage skills too, and had some ball production. So the whole running back thing, he really didn't play all that much. He had a total of 317 yards, I think, or something like that in college. But when he did play, he was playing both sides of the ball, and he was super efficient. And so what I look for when I'm looking at running backs is, yards after contact and how many forced tackles missed. Those are the 2 traits to me that that will display a running back is making yards on his own. He's not just getting the yards that are blocked for him. There's plenty of average NFL running backs that can do that, but it's the guys who are breaking tackles and getting yards, the tough yards. And Vaki showed he could do that. So it's a very small sample size. I truly think that they probably got Vaki mostly for special teams like that. I feel like he has a higher floor just because he can be one of your core special teams guys probably immediately. And that often goes overlooked at the third phase of the game. It's not as important, but there's still some significance to having a strong special teams, and Vaki can do that. And if he is able to develop and the offense side of the ball, he seems like he has pretty natural hands, and he's explosive. He doesn't have that top end speed, but he's still explosive, which is far more important as a running back to be able to burst through the hole and make people miss. And he does all that. So he was down my board quite a ways. I think, he was around 200 for me, and he was drafted 132 overall. So I thought he was going to go lower, but it makes sense that the Lions became infatuated with his intangibles and just being a football player. And I think on special teams is where we'll see the most impact. And I'm looking forward to seeing if his success at the running back position can translate into the NFL, because small sample size. I've already said it at running back in college, but he definitely showed something. And I was a bit surprised he didn't play a little bit more running back if he was that productive in college. So it's, again, 4th round pick. We'll kind of wait and see how they develop. And that can be a game of chance. You never know. And we just have to wait and see.
2 quick side things from me. I really like what Scotty Montgomery had to say about Vaki, about how he came in, had watched all this tape, had all these notes written down about things he had been shown or told. That showed me a lot. Again, off the field, Logan, but impressive, and I think leads to him being a nice pro, probably earlier than most. And the other thing I want to let people know, I haven't went on this rant, but maybe I'll do it in a few weeks, is that I think a lot of times as Lions fans, we think that we get a player or 2 even, and we're like, oh, we're good for the next however long. Like, The NFL, man, you could have two great running backs, and by week three, you could be down to the third, fourth, fifth guy. It can happen that quickly. So I know we love Gibbs because he's a multi-dimensional, positionless. Wait for it. Wait for it. Elite weapon. And then you got Demo, but I mean, come on, Vaki could be really nice too in that rotation and push. Come on, Craig, down a spot or two. So I can see it from that perspective too. Logan, we're going to finish out our first segment, get our great sponsors in here. I want to come back and hear you talk about the overall roster. I got a few questions I'm going to hit with you, but we got two more players to get into, and that's Makai Wingo, 3-tech, defensive tackle, shorter, great captain, leader. We know all this stuff. What'd you think about this pick? The value? What do you see him doing in a Lions uniform? What'd you think?
I loved it. I just thought it was great value. Wingo, I thought, would go a lot higher than he did. I think he went a lot lower than most people thought. And again, consensus big board and kind of that group think not always the way the NFL GMs work, but just to me, the Lions needed inside pass rush. And they have their bigger defensive ends that they deploy on the inside, but you also need, a guy who's more maybe a true defensive tackle first before, and Wingo could play a little bit on the edge too, but I wanted a true pass rusher, and he can do that. He has a elite first step, which is super important. And yes, he's only 285 pounds, like 6 foot. He's not a big guy. But if he can rush the quarterback, then that's all we really need him for. He doesn't need to be someone who has to play all 3 downs. He's a specialist. And in the 6th round, I thought it was just great value. I had him ranked well above Vaki, and they got him in the 6th round. So we'll see. 6th round, I don't necessarily care all that much about. It doesn't need to be a home run. If they can just get any playing time, I think that's really impressive. And just with his skill set, the 1.63 10-yard split, like that's faster than a lot of defensive ends in the NFL. So that's what you're working with, and he's going to be disruptive. And the Lions really haven't had that from any defensive tackle on their roster in a long time. So I'm happy with it. I'm glad at least he's got a skill set that's a little bit unique to the Lions roster, and they can use him however they want to, and just very specific situations, let him go, and they'll be good.
That's what excited me too, is like a depth rotational piece, but inside, outside, a lot of penetration, a lot of hard working. And then, like I say, the leadership thing is really been talked about a lot and very intriguing with that player as well. And then Logan, they come and they finish it out with my boy, Christian Mahogany. I mean, I took this guy in the 4th round. I felt great about it. He's a big, nasty, physical football player. I'm not too worried about all these medical random stuff they brought up. I don't know how he got so late in the 6th, but this is a guy I think that can just be brought along at his speed. Any injuries, he's right in the football game. When a couple people ride off into the sunset, he's a plug-and-play interior guard because, interior guards can do that. They can just step right in and go, and I think that's what you have. So I absolutely love this. Most people did, and most of it's because we knew the name, we knew the player, and we thought he should have went 3-4 rounds earlier. So what did you think when they took him, and what do you think he'll do moving forward?
Yeah, might be my favorite pick of the entire draft, just because I thought he was a mid-round pick. And he checked all my boxes what I look for in a guard. He's nasty, a run defender, or a run blocker, like Mauler type. And he has athleticism too. I mean, the 4.53 short shuttle that he had, you see all these different guards, all the best guards, all can move laterally really well. And the short shuttle is a good indicator of that. And he can do that, but yet strength is like the best part of his game, but he's still athletic enough to move. And so looking at the Lions offensive interior line, it was one of those things where I didn't feel all that comfortable out of Glasgow, Ragnow, and Zeitler. Like, one of those guys is going to be, how frequently are all 3 of those guys going to be playing together? You're going to have to rely on some backup. I just didn't feel like we really had that on our roster. And yeah, Mahogany is a rookie, a 6th round pick. how much can you really depend on him? But I feel comfortable if he had to go into the game where I think he could do it and mesh really well with what the Lions are looking for in their scheme and be able to move people. So I'm super happy with it. Looking at like Mahogany's pass blocking, even he had 422 pass blocking snaps in 2023 and didn't allow a single hit or a sack. So yeah, he has some things he can clean up, but at the same time, he did it well at the college level. I think he just has a lot of potential, and to get that potential in the 6th round, I think he even has a high floor. I'm still a little bit confused on why he went so late, but there's probably a reason. But I didn't uncover it, and I'm more than happy that the Lions got him in the 6th.
There you go. Well, Logan, we knew before we even hit record, we're kind of like, all right, we're going to do this draft review, and we know that me and you just kind of like, I sit back here, throw a question at you, and you just go to town with all the different, things you had. The Logan big board got in there a couple times, which always makes me laugh. That's classic. I still haven't seen this 300, 400 player board that had Amon-Ra St. Brown at like, 258 or whatever. You always want to correct me and say it was like exactly
After
where you got picked.
It gets a little just I know this name. This guy ran a fast 40. He's ranked ahead of this guy.
You always have the great numbers there, and like you say, it's all fun. But we know we could just talk about it for days. But let's go ahead and get our great sponsors here on the pod. I really appreciate you coming on again, everybody. This is Logan Lamorandier, Sports Illustrated All Lions. Again, doing some different things out there in the sports media space, whether it be articles or, the podcast / media appearance, but always just real fun when we can get him on here. And just the funniest thing I tell Logan before he comes on is like, all right, we're going to keep it simple. We're going to talk about these two things. And we both know that it's going to take us about an hour and a half to get through all that, because we just love talking Lions ball, draft, players, everything in between. So, Logan, again, appreciate you coming on. Let's get our great sponsors in, everybody. Listen to those, share the show, tell everybody about the show, check out the show. It really helps us out. And when we come back, we'll get Logan's thoughts on different position groups, roster eval, and some Ask Logan Anything type questions. Everybody, we'll be right back. All right, everybody. This goes out to my fantasy football fans out there. Now, you probably heard about Reality Sports Online, the most powerful fantasy sports platform where owners can build and manage their fantasy team like a real NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? I mean, we're talking free agency, multi-year contracts, rookie drafts, multi-team trades. You could put franchise tags on guys. It's as close as you're going to get to being an NFL GM. But do you think it sounds complicated? It's not. I'm here to tell you it's the best thing about Reality Sports Online is it's just more fun than your normal fantasy league, but it doesn't take barely any more time. After all this, are you still not sure? I mean, come on now. You can test your general manager skills by going over to Reality Sports Online, call it RSO. Please go check out realitysportsonline.com right now. Kool-Aid drinkers, we're back. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Logan not only has been generous with his time, but I've had the most ridiculous tech issues today. It's driving me crazy. We're fighting through. I think we're going to get a good podcast out here, but it's always fun when me and Logan are talking Lions football as well as rookies and everything in between. So, Logan, normally I'd like shout out 8 million Kool-Aid drinkers and talk about all my fantasy leagues and talk about our 18 million great sponsors that keep the show going. But when I got you on, man, we got to get right back into football. So I want to ask you kind of this roster spot. Here we are, early June, just going through OTAs, things I brought up earlier. In broad strokes, like, what do you think of this overall roster, both like depth, primetime players, youth? Like, how you feeling about it overall? Obviously, we were great last year, but do you think it's better? Do you think we're rolling? Or do you think there's still some holes in your mind that really need to get shored up?
Yeah, overall, I think it's really solid, and that's reflective of the record they had last year. and looking at this year, yeah, there's a few weaker spots. I wouldn't say there's any glaring holes or anything like that, but there's not going to be ever a perfect NFL team where it's just like everything is just stacked. That rarely happens. So when I look over their roster, to me, like the receiver spot concerned slightly, and losing Josh Reynolds, I think outside of maybe like a 5 minute stretch in the season last year, and probably the most important part of the season, like he was just very reliable. But he was a solid player, and Jameson Williams, I haven't seen that type of reliability yet out of him. And so, say like if Amon-Ra Brown, St. Brown gets hurt, like all of a sudden that receiver position really scares me. So that's one spot where I think they could get better. I think Ben Johnson and Jared Goff can kind of cover a lot of those deficiencies with just their scheme and having a run game. I've always said it before. I don't think you need to overspend on receivers. Just have like a stacked lineup of receivers, because if you don't have a run game, a quarterback like the Lions do, you can do a lot with just a run game, and that opens up the receivers and gets so many other aspects of the game going. But you also have Sam Laporta and your running backs that can catch the ball. So I'm not overall. That's kind of like the offense. I think the offensive line should be about the same as last year, if not better. I think Jonah Jackson, when he was playing last year, wasn't great. Zeitler seems like a little bit better of a fit in my mind with just how big he is, and he's a great pass blocker. So that's an offensive side of the ball. I think it should pretty much be same as last year, and they're in the previous year. They've been the top offense now for a couple of years. And on defense, they have improved. Like I definitely feel much better about the defense this year than I did last year, and that a lot has to do with probably DJ Reader, really just that big man up front. Ali McNeil's a big guy, and yes, he lost weight and was playing more 3 technique last year and the year before a little bit, but Reader just having a true nose tackle and a guy who's done it and has proven that he can do it. I think that's going to go a long way. And on the edge, they have Aiden Hutchinson, really looking for that other guy. Marcus Davenport, I don't know if he necessarily is a threat, but you played almost all last year without James Houston, and I think he can be kind of that spark that the Lions needed in rushing the passer. And the secondary, linebackers still the same as last year. Maybe if Jack Campbell can continue to progress, and Derek Barnes played well last year too, so it's not like maybe if Jack Campbell played more and lived up to that first round billing and started to being everything I think he can be. I really like Jack Campbell. The linebackers could be awesome. The whole defense is just I think relying on the cornerbacks that the Lions brought in. If they could shore that up, I think the whole defense is going to be way better, because they were the ones that were having the issues. And now Carlton Davis, Aaron Arnold, Rakestraw, those guys are the big, very important pieces. I guess they're young. Davis has been in the league now for 5 years, going into 6 year, I think. Could be wrong, but if the cornerback position gets shored up, I think their defense can be, middle of the road, maybe even top 10. So there's between a top offense and looking at the roster on the defense, yeah, they should be right back where they were last year in my mind.
So my follow-ups to that were ask Logan about the receivers, maybe check in with the D line, how about the O line, maybe the corners. I think you covered it all right there. I guess what I'd say is that, the Lions had such a great season last year. There are like a couple fluky plays, which I don't know about you, but it still drives me nuts every time it comes up that we're up 17, all the stupid stuff that happened in the second half, which wasn't like a game in October. This was to go to the Super Bowl, and you absolutely crumbled, folded like fresh laundry. It was ridiculous. So that still drives me insane. So when you say like a good roster, I expect them to be right where they were, better, and everyone's expecting better. Like, I think people are thinking this is like the NBA, where like if you come up short, you're just there for the next half decade, and you're always in that same spot. You get over the hump, and then you win the championship. Like it can change very quickly with football. So it's this weird dichotomy where I feel like they're better, but I'm not as confident that we're gonna be as healthy or roll or get the type of W's and stuff that we got last year, even though I think I've been on the pod projecting division titles, 12, 14 wins, Super Bowl. I have said those things, but I also think that a step back or some bumps in the road are very doable. Now, you did start off talking about the wide receivers. You didn't mention my boy DPJ, Donovan Peoples Jones from Michigan. This is a guy I've loved ever since the draft process. He kind of had a little bit of a lackluster college career towards the end, but freaky size speed mixture, good kid. He's been in the system now. Like, I'm really thinking that he could be a surprise, and I want to kick it back to you about J Mo. You know, you see all these tweets, breakout season loading and all these gifs and whatnot. And it's kind of like, I'm a fan of hashtag JMOFast, but what even is a breakout anymore? What's he going to break out with? 35 catches, 40 I mean, that's a breakout based on the 20 that he's had in 2 seasons. So I don't even know what is his ceiling. Is he a 70, 80 catch, 1,200 yard, 8 to 10 touchdown type football player? I mean, if they use him, but I just haven't seen it. It's one of those, like, I like to project, but I just haven't seen enough to say he's going to make that type of leap where he has 65 more catches than he's ever had in a season all of a sudden, but he has the opportunity. So you brought up receivers, and those two things jumped out to me of what is JMO in your opinion, and why do you hate DPJ so much, just like you hated DeAndre Swift?
Okay. I don't hate DPJ at all. And actually, I thought, he showed plenty of promise when he was with the Browns, and then last year, even in the small opportunities that the Lions gave him, he did make some plays. So there's some potential there. For whatever reason, despite his athletic testing, I just don't see that on the field. And maybe he's just a long strider or something, but I don't see that same burst. But he's got some good size. I think he can be a quality, like, depth type of piece, and I don't think he can be a Josh Reynolds type, but maybe he could. We'll see. I hope he does. I'm a Michigan guy. I'll root for him. And then with JMO, it's just tough because he has the speed, and that's obvious. And when he gets the ball, it's just a home run, like, waiting to happen. But it's just all those little consistency things that all the top receivers. There's so many receivers that are in the NFL that aren't overly fast, just average speed. And yes, there's the exceptions where there's the speedsters who just tear everything up, and it definitely helps. But there's a lot of really good receivers that put up huge numbers that you don't have to be fast for. What they're good at is the small little things like route running, catching, in the nuance of the receiver position that I just haven't seen out of Jameson Williams. And maybe that develops. Again, we've talked about progression with younger players over how many different guys now on this podcast. So it's like maybe he does take a step, but I think Jared Goff just works really well with guys who are consistent. He knows where they're going to be. And whenever Jameson Williams gets a pass, it always does seem just a little awkward, whether it's the timing or the ball adjustment by Williams. So I'm hoping that his playing time obviously will probably increase by a lot, that he starts getting in a groove and a rhythm, and he can take plays that most people might only make 20 yards, and he can take it to the house. So there's always that upside with him. And honestly, if he makes one big play a game, like, it's probably more than worth it to have him out there on the field. So I'm just conflicted with him. I think he's more of like a gadget piece at this point, and we'll see if he's progressed in the offseason and worked on routes. It sure seems like he has been working, but sometimes it's just not as natural for others as it is for different players. So it's, again, another player. We'll wait and see where he's at. I still have high expectations for him. In my mind, a breakout season would be like a 900-yard season. I would consider that to be a win in my mind.
Good stuff. So here's where I'm at. I wanna bundle up three position groups: corners, D line, and linebackers. To me, the reason I like all three of these, and I know you hear all the things that are out there about who's gonna rush across from Hutchinson, or just like that's the only thing people talk about nowadays. It's like, well, we have other bodies. We've done pretty well with a bunch of stiffs the last couple years. 97's only getting better, so I'm not as worried as most. But the reason I bundle these three groups up is because I feel like corners, we have so many more good options, like you talked about earlier, than before. Before it was like we got one or two guys maybe, and then a bunch of guys that are straight from shining shoes at the bowling alley behind them, or the guy that was out wearing the costume, twirling the sign, trying to cover like top corners. It just doesn't work well. So now we have all these bodies, D line, like I just said, saying that we stay pretty healthy. You can roll guys off the edge. We have guys in the interior that can roll, that can play similar positions, and that can penetrate, that can run stuff. And then when you move to the linebackers, it's like I expect a really big jump from my boy Jack Campbell. Jack Campbell is no nonsense football player that's coming into his own, that makes some mistakes still, but you always see him around the football. You always see him making plays. And oh, by the way, he's 6'5", 240 some pounds, that can bang and hit you, which is what football's all about. So I feel like we have so many linebackers. I mean, we could have 3-4 guys go down before you even get to Rodrigo. So I feel like those three spots, we might not have like all pros. We might not have guys that make 20 some million, thank goodness. And we might not have ultimate game changers, but we got bodies, we got depth, we got guys that can roll, and multiple guys that I think can be more productive than you would think on the surface. So that's why I love those three groups. What about you?
Yeah, I will say at defensive end, outside of Hutchinson, there is a bit of concern because Davenport has an injury history. James Houston now, year out of him where he just tore it up. Like, can we expect that type of dominance? I wouldn't think so over a course of a full season, but it would sure be awesome if he could. But there's not. The Lions used their linebacker, like Derek Barnes on the edge a ton, Jack Campbell on the edge a ton last year, and they were rather unproductive whenever they rushed the passer. Like it almost seemed like a wasted rusher sometimes. And there was a lot of different ways the Lions manufactured pressure, and going down the stretch at the end of the season, they did find ways to get to the quarterback. So if they can do that, that's great. But every once in a while, it's nice just to have, all you have to do is rush 4 players, and you're going to have your defender beat the player across. And that's, Hutchinson does that a lot. McNeil has shown he can do that. But outside of that, on the edge, you have a lot of bigger edge players that are a bit of a tweener and are definitely not true pass rushers. Josh Pascal, John Kaminsky, maybe even Wingo falls into that role. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but I would have preferred the Lions, not preferred, but just I wouldn't have been upset if the Lions drafted an edge rusher that was more of a true pass rusher to line up alongside Hutchinson in the passing downs.
So you're one of those people.
What one of those? I think that the position could be improved. Yes, I think it could be. It's not a perfect position.
One of those guys I made fun of with that goofy voice that I did earlier, or maybe that's me too, because I wanted the kid from Utah in the second round rather than my boy Straw. But no, I'm with you on all those points. I guess, like, I don't know, there's something to be said in football with, instead of like overpaying at all these positions, like I think Brad Holmes just thinks James Houston's a good football player, like DPJ is a good player. Like, some of these guys just need opportunity, health, and the ability to go show it, and you'll get nice production out of people that aren't highly paid. So I don't know. I think it's going to show itself. I think that we'll be okay rushing the passer, especially because sometimes getting after the quarterback isn't just like D lines, edges, interior. I mean, they're going to be bringing lots of blitzes from all over the place. And like I say, you're going to be able to withstand injuries at corner, safety, linebacker, D line. And we already know the offense is rolling. So, I just think that's going to bode really well for this team because I would expect injuries to hit as they always do, but also them to be able to sustain and also move chess pieces around. Where are different people going to be, when they're going to be there, what are we going to run, what are we not going to run. We're going to be able to play more man, which gives you more chance to get people up and going. So I don't think it's just put another big 6'5", 250-pound freaky edge rusher over across from 97 and all of a sudden we're just killing quarterbacks. I think that we can still do that with these other people that are out there. So, yeah, good stuff, man. Anything else you want to hit on the roster eval or just kind of where we're at now? Or you just should we leave it at we got a hell of a football team, a young football team, a good cap situation, even though we did pay people. We may get into that here in a moment. And there's no reason we shouldn't be able to play some really exciting, great football with this roster. And who knows what might still be added. How about that? So, like I mentioned, about maybe adding. Let's go to my Ask Logan Anything section to close out the show. Logan, free agent addition by Brad, always open for business homes in the next couple months. Yes or no?
I'm gonna go yes because he's always tinkering. The odds are is he will do something. Sometimes it's not always what you think it's going to be, but it would make a lot of sense if they added a safety just to have a veteran in the room.
Do you have a name or two on your wish list?
Oh, well.
I think I know who it might be.
I know. And maybe he's not the same player he used to be, but I still think he's pretty good. And he seems to like Detroit, so that's near the top. There were some other guys too. I can't think of off the top of my head.
Come on, we
there.
We know it's Quandre or Justin Simmons. Those are the dream scenarios, right?
Oh yeah, Justin Simmons. How did I forget about him? He was one of my big draft crushes that I had, and I've always liked him. And
I love that player.
I always go back to, like, see, I told you we should have drafted him.
Exactly.
Should have drafted him back in 2015 or whatever it was.
And why is he not picked? Why is he not picked up? It's like you say, his price tag is probably high, but it's probably getting lower because he's still out there. Like what an addition that would be. So, gosh, I love that.
Yeah.
We did kind of hint to and talk about BB. Do you see him best at safety or playing nickel in 2024 and beyond?
I mean, with what he did last year, why would you even really try to change it? He was a playmaker. There was some struggles here and there, mostly with penalties and just the worst times. But even in college, he was mostly a nickel corner, and he plays his best close to the line of scrimmage. So I'm fine with keeping him there. And when he did play safety, the Lions moved him back to nickel just because it sounded like, he was playing better there. So he's just really a jack of all trades type of guy. So just put him wherever. I think he can do it all. And I do think that our cornerback depth is greater than our safety depth right now. So he might end up at safety out of necessity.
Real quick, one awesome thing I saw was on the Terrion Arnold, a.k.a. Agent Zero's YouTube personal video before the draft. Want to know who he was FaceTiming with, who he was laughing with, who he was communicating, having a great relationship? You want to know? You really want to know?
I think I know.
Brian Branch. Hold on. My boy, Brian Branch. That was incredible. So they're going to be a great mix in that secondary. I agree you can move all around. I also agree why change it, but you move them to safety. Amik and others play that Nick spot, and then you put our guys on the outside. It could really help the overall team and defense and really make it multiple. So interested in all that. Continuing with Ask Logan Anything. Levi. Are the Levi's a fit or not a fit anymore? If you know what I'm saying. See what I did?
Yeah, well, his time, it's now or never for him. and especially with Wingo coming in and Reader coming in, all of a sudden Broderick Martin still got there who's developing, but they typically don't keep more than 4 defensive tackles on the roster, especially when you have Kaminsky and Pascal and Hutchinson, even Davenport, the guys that can move inside and play. So Levi, I think we kind of know what he is at this point, and that's probably unfortunately a bust, one of Brad Holmes' few misses. And now I hope that I said that he just has a huge season this upcoming year. But at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if it's time to move on and see if another player can take his role, and not like he really had a role to begin with anyway. So yeah.
So for me, the Levi 505s or the 702s or I don't even know, do they number jeans anymore? Is Levi even a thing at the stores? I don't even know.
No idea.
He obviously was a fit. I don't know if Brad Holmes put these on in the dressing room or if why he missed maybe all these medical challenges this player had. Obviously, I do the gimmick on the show, aka Big Denim, um, which is fun. Only he hasn't really big anything except a big disappointment. So I I don't know, man. For me, it's like I hear he keeps getting better. He's not, there's all these things about he couldn't even bend over to touch his toes when he first had these issues, and now he can at least do that. It's like, okay, that's tremendous. Can he get after the quarterback? Can he actually penetrate? Can he make plays? I mean, that's what we want to know rather than how his flexibility is doing in warm-up lines or in the calisthenics. So I think there's still a chance maybe that he's finally back to where he should be and he could kind of be a rotational interior piece. You'd hate to see a second rounder wash out like that, but I agree with you. It's kind of like now or never for big old Levi there. All right, I got a couple more, Logan, and we'll get you up out of here. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you going through this battle of a pod we've had here with people. If you want to know why we haven't been playing gimmicks and whatnot, yeah, it's been a tech challenge. But like I said, we're getting through it. This is one I really want to know from you, man. Golf contract. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs in the middle?
Yeah, I think we've been on the same page with him, that I was always like, once he came over, as more so prove it, and he looked his best on the Rams when he had a running game and a defense, and that continues to be the case in Detroit. So I do think he's earned the contract that he got. In the back of my mind, though, there's still a little fear that, with his contract, and I think it was fair asking value what he got. I don't think it was anything egregious. But in the back of my mind, there's still the thought that, well, what if his contract starts taking up, cap space elsewhere, and all of a sudden he doesn't have this complete team around him? Is he still going to be able to carry the team, or if Ben Johnson leaves? So I'm happy with it. I think he deserved his contract and earned it, and he proved me wrong with just what I thought he was, and he's improved year over year. So yeah, I'm good with it, but I can't say I'm completely sold. Like, I'm so glad they did that type of thing. You know what I'm kind of saying there?
Oh, definitely. I think it's almost unfair to sort of say thumbs in the middle because it's quarterback. You have to pay them. You have to do this. This is the thing that drives me nuts, and we probably mentioned it, or I've said it on shows previous. I just don't get this quarterback market. Like, I understand, like, things go up, stars get paid, but I don't understand how quarterback goes up 20 million per year. It feels like these days from 5 years ago till now. I feel like every year it bumps up 5 or 10 million, and now we're in this kooky range of 50 is minimum wage, 50 million that is, and it's just like makes no sense to me. So I don't think it's thumbs up for me, but every time I see that number and think about what could happen if certain things don't go as well as they had been going, what this guy can be. But I mean, great leader, says everything right. So I'm on board from the intangibles perspective, Logan, and the production and what we've seen on the field. I'm good with all that. So just hope he can keep it rolling,
Yep.
especially now that his price went from like 30 to 53 million per. That's a pretty big change there, even at the quarterback position.
Yeah, I mean, we won't see it this year, but in the future, you're not going to have as much draft capital if you're continuing to trade it away. And, the better you are, the lower draft capital you have. So it'll just be interesting to see, coming back, if the Lions lose some pieces, and the Lions have their core already set in place. They've paid a lot of these guys, which is nice. But if they don't have it as a complete team, can he still put the team on the shoulders and carry them? And not many quarterbacks in the NFL can, but you're still paying him like he should be able to do that.
Exactly, man. I cannot wait. It is nice to. We have to talk about Saint and Penne because I think those are two really core pieces. Everything's there, not only from production, but on and off the field, as well as kind of premier positions. And like you say, the quarterback kind of falls in that similar bucket where to get all three of those done in one off season is positive just on the surface, regardless of numbers. And then you can just roll forward. And this regime obviously has a plan. They know the value. They feel like they have a good pulse on how to replace certain positions and do things. So I feel really good about rolling into the future. Logan, this is an open-ended one to end it, man. Do you have any bold predictions, takes, or just something that you want to throw out there that might be Kool-Aid fueled or cornbread laced that you just think, man, I want to put this out there because I feel real strong about this, about the 2024 season, Detroit Lions, anything in between?
It's not so much Kool-Aid filled, but I do just want to throw a reminder out there to people that, like, even if the Lions record might not be as good or better as last year, I think it should be. But even if it isn't, the Lions have a tougher schedule this year. They're not going to catch teams off guard. I don't necessarily think that the Lions would even regress with a worse record. They still are a really good team. It's just hard to win in the NFL. So I know there's a lot of hype, and I fall into that category too, where I think the Lions, should be a 13-win team when you look at their schedule. But they do have a tougher schedule now that they finished first place in the NFC North last year, and it's tough to be really good. So I know, sorry to let you down. It's not Kool-Aid filled, but as long as the Lions, can have a run in the playoffs or at least look good, it's really tough to be better than the Lions were last year. So I'm trying to set my expectations on where that should be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I knew when I threw that at you, unless you had something in your back pocket, I'm like, man, it's going to be a tough one because Logan is pretty measured. But, on this show, we like to hype everybody up. And that's sort of where you were headed. You just weren't willing to go there, and I'll do it for you. I mean, we both love this football team. We think that they're talented. We are excited about who they've added in positions that were weak. We think we pretty much stayed the same or better at positions that we were already good at. So we've locked up the quarterback, the edge rusher, the wide receiver. We have elite running backs, offensive line. We've got can roll the D line. We can hopefully actually cover people now. There's no reason this team shouldn't be rolling, win the North, stack up W's, get in the playoffs. And if people got to go through Detroit to try to get to the Super Bowl or get to the NFC, good luck with that, because we're not losing home playoff games. I'm here to tell you that right now. So everything is Kool-Aid and cornbread here in Detroit. People are finally getting a winning football team, a good football team. And not only do you not have to apologize for that, like Logan said, enjoy it, and also know that even if little bumps in the road hit or something, Cam Sutton or other things, it's like we can overcome that and still have a good football team and have a really good chance to make a run and be one of those last few teams. And that's really all you can ask for, and just see how the chips fall from there. So I'm excited about it, man. It's early June. Before you know it, training camp will be here, then preseason, and then real football. Us versus Patty Stafford, Matty Staten family, opening it up Sunday Night Football, man. Can't wait.
Yeah, no, it'll be here before you know it. Can't wait. It's expectations. Expectations were high last year, but these are the going into the season highest expectations I've ever had as a Lions fan. So it's exciting times, man.
There is no doubt. So, Logan, you've been very generous with your time, man. I know before we got going, you always downplay, what you're doing or what you're up to. But I just encourage everybody, if you see a Logan Lamorandier article on Sports Illustrated All Lions or anywhere out there Lions related, you see a tweet with some stats or whatever, go give him that follow at L Lamorandier or find him on Facebook there with his Lions page because. Man, you always put out good stuff, and I always try to pump you up when you come on because I know the people just can't wait to hear you kind of break down the game, talk about the game. They're always like, Okri, why do you talk so much? Why don't you just get out of the way and let Logan do his thing? I'm like, I'm trying, man, but we have fun talking balls. So everybody is kind of looks forward to you coming on the show. I look forward to having you on, and it's just a really great time and a blessing to be able to talk ball and get to know you a little bit better, man. And I just can't thank you enough.
Yeah, same, man. I'm glad we didn't wait 5 months this time. Try to do it more regularly coming up.
Definitely, man. Well, hopefully, and then we got Joey Christopoulos from Believe Podcast Network and working with Big Ten Network coming up. So I'm going to make fun of his Chicago Bears, and he's going to grill me about the Lions, I'm sure. So that should be fun. But everybody, that's what we got. Go check out Logan's stuff. Drink that Detroit Koolaid. I recommend double-sided cornbread. And we'll catch you next time right here on the Detroit Koolaid Cast. Take care, everybody. We're out.
Pack the bags, start the plane. This game is over. It is over. What a comeback by the Lions. Drink it in, man.